They woke to the smell of burning flesh. Tony bolted upright in the dark. His wife, Deborah, lay beside him, still asleep. But something was wrong. The air had changed, thick and chemical, bitter as melted plastic. He sniffed again, confused. No fire alarm, no heat, no smoke. But the stench was unmistakable. He rose from bed, scanning the room. The baby monitor crackled softly. The house was still, but his chest burned. In the hallway mirror, under the dim blue glow of the nightlight, he saw them. 3 long, red scratches, raw and fresh, carved into his skin. He hadn't bumped into anything. He hadn't even moved. But there they were, as if something had clawed him. It was only their second week in the house. They had come to Atchison, Kansas to build a quiet life. They found a small rental home on a quiet street, close to downtown, but far enough to feel private. The white brick house looked normal, plain even. No one said a word when they signed the lease. Tony and Deborah Pickman had no idea what they were walking into. At first, the house felt like a dream, cozy, safe, a place to start their family. Deborah was in her 3rd trimester, and they poured themselves into preparing the nursery, painting the walls, arranging baby clothes, and setting out stuffed animals on the shelves. But the house was never quiet. There were knocks, soft ones at first, like a child tapping from the inside of a closet, then footsteps at night, scurrying in the hall. The baby's room door creaked open on its own more than once. They blamed the dog at first, but their shepherd mix refused to go near the nursery. He growled at corners, whined at empty hallways, and barked at the ceiling. Sometimes he'd stand frozen on the stairs, trembling, eyes locked on something Tony and Deborah couldn't see. They laughed it off, told themselves it was nerves, pregnancy stress, old house sounds, until the stuffed animals moved. Tony had arranged them neatly on the shelf. He remembered doing it. But the next day, he found them sitting in a perfect circle on the floor, facing outward, like they were guarding something. No one had been in the room. No one touched them. Then the nursery lights started turning on by themselves. Always that room. Always at night. They called the landlord. He claimed it had never happened before. Then came the dreams. Tony began waking, drenched in sweat, haunted by the image of a young girl in a tattered dress. She stood at the foot of the bed, her head tilted slightly, long hair obscuring her face. Sometimes she cried. Sometimes she smiled. Sometimes she said nothing at all, just stared with black, endless eyes. And when he woke, the room reeked again of burning flesh. Tony tried to hide it from Deborah, but he grew distant, irritable, short-tempered. The house gnawed at his nerves. He'd forget what he was saying mid-sentence. He'd feel a wave of cold pass through him and lose minutes at a time. Deborah caught him once staring into the nursery, unmoving, whispering softly to no one. One night, during a heated argument, the kitchen light exploded above his head. The microwave turned on by itself. The radio screamed static. Tony screamed back, and the toaster flew off the counter. That was the breaking point. They reached out to a paranormal team from Kansas City. Investigators arrived with cameras, voice recorders, EMF meters, infrared sensors. At first, the house behaved. The equipment showed nothing, until the nursery door slammed on its own. Then the temperature in the room dropped by 30 degrees in under a minute. Then came the shadows, darting along the walls, captured in split-second flashes on infrared. The EMF meters spiked wildly. One investigator was scratched on his lower back. Another passed out cold. A psychic on the team walked in, paused, and whispered, "It's pretending to be a little girl." Everyone went silent. "It's not Sallie," she said. "Not anymore. If it ever was." She stepped into the nursery, turned her back to the group, and muttered in a low, almost childlike voice. Then she collapsed. They carried her out, shaking. But Deborah didn't want to believe it. She had felt a strange empathy toward the presence, especially now that their baby Taylor had been born. It felt young, lonely, curious. She began leaving toys out for it. She even spoke to it, gently, as if it were a child lost in time. Then she saw it. She had just finished feeding Taylor and was walking past the oven when she saw a reflection in the glass. A little girl in a frilly dress, barefoot, with hands clasped neatly. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't crying. She was staring directly at Deborah. When Deborah spun around, no one was there. Later that night, Tony came to bed with scratches down his back, again in sets of 3. Deep this time. Bleeding. They began hearing voices through the baby monitor. Not cries, whispers, soft, high-pitched, sometimes giggling, sometimes pleading. "Come play," one of them said. Deborah raced to the nursery, only to find the mobile spinning wildly, the window wide open, and her son wide-eyed with terror. The baby began to scream through the nights. Nothing soothed him except being taken outside. Inside the house, he wailed until he turned purple. And still, Tony stayed up late, asking questions into the dark, whispering to whatever was there. He was unraveling. He was drawn to it, possessed by the mystery of it. That's when it touched Deborah. She had just stepped out of the shower when she saw it. Tiny, wet footprints on the tile. Not adult-sized, child-sized. She followed them, dripping and chilled, into the hallway. There, just past the nursery door, she felt a pressure on her shoulder, then a voice in her ear. "Don't leave me." The mirror in the hallway cracked. They called another psychic. This one refused to enter the house. She stood on the porch, eyes closed, and said, "It's feeding on your energy. The more you love your child, the more it wants you afraid." Tony installed cameras throughout the house. One night, he captured a video of the rocking horse swaying violently on its own, the baby's mobile spinning counterclockwise, and what appeared to be a mist, shaped like a girl, crossing the room. He never showed the footage publicly, but the investigators saw it. One of them quit the field altogether. Deborah began to experience migraines, nosebleeds, fainting spells. She was diagnosed with severe stress, but the doctors found nothing wrong. Tony began waking with welts across his chest and arms. He lost weight. His eyes looked sunken. He began sleepwalking, once waking in the nursery, holding a stuffed bear and humming a lullaby. Deborah begged him to leave. They fled the house 2 days later. Left everything. Moved in with family. Never returned to live there. But the haunting didn't stop. Tony had nightmares for months, always of the girl, always standing just out of reach. Once, Deborah woke to find him standing in their hallway, whispering Sallie's name. Years later, they agreed to return for a documentary. The house was vacant, but the air was the same, charged, dense, wrong. The baby's room, still filled with abandoned toys and peeling wallpaper, felt 20 degrees colder than the hallway. The camera batteries drained in minutes. One crew member vomited in the nursery. Tony stood at the foot of the stairs and whispered, "Sallie." A soft thump upstairs, then a giggle. They left before dark. Today, the Sallie House is one of the most studied paranormal locations in the country. Tourists walk through it with shaky hands. Paranormal shows film dramatic reenactments. Skeptics scoff at the stories, but those who've stayed overnight rarely return. As for the Pickmans, Deborah won't speak of it anymore. Tony claims he's fine, but sometimes he still hears knocking at night. They moved far away. Their son is grown now. He doesn't remember the house, but he dreams of a girl with black eyes. Sometimes she's smiling, sometimes she isn't, and sometimes she's whispering his name. Thank you for listening to The Lantern's Tale. If you enjoyed this true story, join us next time, if you dare.